The screams echoed through the mountain before the first sun had risen. They were not screams of pain. They were screams of a mother who had lost her child. Matriarch Velith was sleeping in her chamber when the first cry reached her ears. She opened her golden eyes and lifted her massive head. Her scales, dark as the void between stars, caught the dim light of the glowing crystals that lined her walls. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones. A young warrior burst through the entrance of her chamber. His wings were spread wide with panic. His breath came in quick gasps that sent small flames dancing from his nostrils. "Matriarch," he said. His voice was shaking. "The nursery. The hatchlings. They are gone." Velith did not understand at first. Gone? Hatchlings did not simply go anywhere. They were kept deep inside Mount Cellin, protected by ancient magic and 20 guards at all times. The nursery caverns were the most sacred place on all of Pirith. No enemy had ever reached them. No enemy had ever tried. She rose to her full height. Her body was the size of a small building. Her wings, when spread, could block out the light of both suns. She had lived for 3,000 years and had seen many terrible things. But the fear in this young warrior's eyes was something new. "How many?" she asked. The warrior could not meet her gaze. 12, Matriarch. 12 hatchlings, all from the same sleeping chamber. Velith felt her heart turn to ice. She flew to the nursery herself. The journey took only moments for one as powerful as her. She landed at the great stone entrance where a crowd had already gathered. Mothers were crying. Fathers stood with claws clenched and fire building in their throats. The guards who had been on duty knelt with their heads low, waiting for punishment or death. Velith walked past them all without a word. She entered the nursery. The sleeping chamber was empty. 12 nests made of warm volcanic stone sat in a circle. Each nest was designed to hold a hatchling safely through the night. Each nest was cold. Each nest was abandoned. There were no signs of struggle. No blood, no burn marks, no broken stones. It was as if the 12 little ones had simply vanished into thin air. "Search everything," Velith commanded. Her voice was calm, but those who knew her could hear the rage building beneath it. "Search the mountain. Search the sky. Search every corner of this world. Find our children." The Draken were an ancient race. They had ruled Pirith for 100,000 years. Their ancestors had fought wars across the stars. They had burned entire fleets of enemy ships with their fire. They had never known defeat. They had never known fear. But today, they knew fear. Within hours, every Draken warrior was in the sky. They searched the volcanic plains. They searched the crystal forests. They searched the deep caves and the high peaks. They found nothing. Not a single scale. Not a single footprint. Not a single clue. As the second sun began to set, suspicion began to grow. "The humans," someone whispered. It must be the humans. The whispers spread like fire through dry grass. Soon, it was all anyone could talk about. The humans had arrived on Pirith only 2 years ago. They had come in their strange metal ships, asking for permission to build a small outpost on the southern continent. They said they wanted peace. They said they wanted to learn. They said they wanted to trade. The Draken had agreed, but they had never trusted these strange creatures. Humans were so small, so soft, so weak. They had no scales to protect them. They had no fire in their bellies. They could not fly. What kind of creature could survive in the universe without these things? And yet, humans had spread across the stars faster than any other species. They built colonies on 100 worlds. They traded with 1,000 races. They were everywhere, always watching, always learning. Now, 12 Draken children were missing. and the humans were the only outsiders on the planet. Velith received the delegation in her council chamber. The room was carved from black stone and lit by rivers of lava that flowed through channels in the walls. It was designed to remind visitors of the Draken's power. It was designed to make them feel small. Ambassador Yuna walked into the chamber without showing any fear. She was a young woman by human standards, perhaps 30 years old. Her hair was black and pulled back from her face. Her eyes were dark and steady. She wore simple gray clothes that showed no decoration or rank. Behind her walked her aide, a quiet man named Dohwan, who carried a small device for translation. Yuna stopped in the center of the chamber and bowed her head in respect. She did not kneel. Humans Velith had learned only kneeled for their own leaders. "High Matriarch," Yuna said. Her voice was clear and calm. "We have heard about the missing children. We are deeply sorry for your pain. We want to help." Velith studied the human woman. She looked for lies in her eyes. She looked for guilt. She found neither, but that meant nothing. Humans were strange creatures. They could hide their feelings behind masks that even Draken seers could not see through. "Many of my people believe your kind is responsible," Velith said. She did not soften her words. There was no point in being gentle. Yuna nodded slowly. "I understand why they would think that. We are strangers here. When something bad happens, it is natural to suspect strangers." She paused. "But we did not take your children, Matriarch. We would never harm the young of any species. It goes against everything we believe." "Words are easy," Velith replied. "Any creature can make words." "You are right," Yuna agreed. "That is why I am not asking you to trust our words. I am asking you to let us prove them. Every human on Pyrrhus will join the search. We will open our outpost to your warriors. They can search every room, every ship, every storage container. We have nothing to hide." Dohwan stepped forward and bowed. "We also have technology that might help," he said. His voice was softer than Yuna's, almost gentle. "Scanning equipment, tracking devices, things that work differently from your seer's magic. Perhaps together, we can find what neither of us can find alone." Velith looked at the two humans. They stood so small before her. She could kill them both with a single breath of fire. They must know this. Yet they showed no fear. Either they were innocent or they were the most dangerous creatures she had ever met. She made her decision. "Very well," she said. "Your people may join the search. But know this, Ambassador. If we discover that humans are responsible for this crime, no treaty in the universe will protect you. I will burn your outpost to ash. I will hunt down every human on this world. And I will make sure the rest of your species learns what happens when you harm Draken children." Yuna met her gaze without flinching. "If any human harmed your children, Matriarch, I will light the fire myself." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Velith nodded. "Go, search, find our children." Yuna bowed again and left the chamber. As she walked out into the fading light of the twin suns, Dohwan walked beside her in silence. They did not speak until they were far from any Draken ears. "They will blame us no matter what we find," Dohwan said quietly. Yuna looked up at the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, 12 little dragon children were missing. Somewhere out there, the truth was waiting to be found. "Then we better find those children first," she said. "And we better find them alive." The night fell over Pyrrhus. In the nursery, 12 nests remained empty. In the mountains, Draken warriors searched through the darkness. And in a place no one thought to look, something wonderful was happening. But that is a story for another time. Lieutenant Somi had been a soldier for 10 years. She had fought in border conflicts on 3 different planets. She had led rescue missions into war zones. She had seen death and suffering and fear, but she had never felt as nervous as she did walking through the crystal forest of Pirith with 3 angry dragon warriors watching her every step. The forest was beautiful in a strange way. The trees were not made of wood, but of living crystal that grew from the volcanic soil. They glowed with soft blue and purple light, and when the wind blew through them, they made sounds like distant bells. Under different circumstances, Somi might have stopped to admire them. Today, she kept her eyes on the path ahead. Her team walked in a tight formation. Taiwu, the communications specialist, stayed close to her right side. He was tall and thin, with quick hands that never stopped moving over his equipment. Yunji, the medic, walked on her left. She was small but strong, and she carried enough medical supplies to treat almost any injury. Behind them came Jinho, the engineer. He was the oldest of the group, with gray in his hair and lines around his eyes that came from years of solving difficult problems. The 3 Draken warriors moved around them like shadows. They made almost no sound despite their size. Each one was as large as a horse, with scales that shifted between black and deep purple in the crystal light. Their wings were folded tight against their backs, and their yellow eyes never stopped watching the humans. The leader of the Draken group was named Kethros. She was a female warrior with a long scar that ran across her snout and down her neck. The scar was old and white against her dark scales. She had earned it in battle, Somi knew, though she did not know the details. Kethros had not spoken to the humans since they left the Draken city. She did not need to speak. The hatred in her eyes said everything. They had been walking for 6 hours when Taiwu suddenly stopped. "Lieutenant," he said. His voice was tight with excitement. "I have something." Everyone gathered around him. Even Kethros moved closer, though she kept her distance from the humans. Taiwu held up a small scanning device. Numbers and symbols moved across its screen. "Energy readings," he explained. "Very faint, but definitely there. Something passed through this area recently. Something alive. How recently?" Somi asked. "Hard to say exactly. Maybe 2 days. Maybe 3. The energy signature is unusual. I have never seen anything quite like it." He looked up at the Draken warriors. "It could be your young ones." Kethros pushed forward. Her massive head loomed over Taiwu. He did not step back, though Somi could see sweat forming on his forehead. "Which direction?" Kethros demanded. Taiwu pointed toward the northeast. "That way. The readings get stronger in that direction." Kethros made a sound deep in her throat. It might have been satisfaction or anger. With Draken, it was hard to tell. "The Shattered Peaks," she said. "The trail leads to the Shattered Peaks." The other 2 Draken warriors exchanged worried looks. Somi noticed their reaction. "What are the Shattered Peaks?" she asked. Kethros did not answer for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was heavy. "A place of death. The mountains there collapsed long ago. The air is thin. The winds are unpredictable. Thermal currents change without warning. Many adult Draken have died trying to fly through them. For hatchlings." She did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Yunji stepped forward. "Then we need to hurry. If the children went that way, they might be in danger." "If they went that way, they are already dead," one of the other Draken said. His voice was bitter. "No hatchling could survive the Shattered Peaks. Their wings are too weak. Their fire is too small." Somi shook her head. "We do not know that for certain. The readings show living energy signatures. Until we see proof otherwise, we assume they are alive." She looked at Kethros. "How long to reach the Shattered Peaks?" "On foot? Another day. Perhaps more." Kethros spread her wings slightly. "I could fly there in an hour. But then you could not carry us, Jinho said. He had been quiet until now, studying the terrain with careful eyes. And if the children are there, you might need our help. Kethros looked at the old engineer with something that might have been surprise. Why would we need human help? Jinho smiled slightly. Because we cannot fly. We are experts at surviving in places where flying is not possible. The dragon warrior stared at him. For a moment, Somi thought Kethros might attack. Instead, she made that strange sound in her throat again. Fine, Kethros said. We walk, but we walk fast. Any human who falls behind stays behind. They moved through the crystal forest as quickly as they could. The terrain grew rougher as they traveled northeast. The trees became smaller and less frequent. The ground changed from soft volcanic soil to broken rock. Soon, they could see the shattered peaks rising in the distance. The mountains were unlike anything Somi had ever seen. They looked as if a giant hand had grabbed them and twisted them into impossible shapes. Sharp edges pointed in every direction. Great holes gaped in the sides of cliffs. The whole range seemed broken, like a mirror that had been dropped and shattered but never cleaned up. As they got closer, Somi began to understand why the draken feared this place. She could feel the air changing. One moment it was hot, the next moment cold. Wind came from unexpected directions, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent. She watched one of the draken warriors test his wings, only to have a sudden gust nearly knock him off his feet. We may camp here, Kethros announced as the light began to fade. We continue in the morning. They found shelter in a shallow cave at the base of the mountains. The humans set up their equipment while the draken built a fire using their breath. Soon, the cave was warm and bright. Somi sat near the entrance, watching the dark mountains. Taiwu came to sit beside her. The energy readings are stronger here, he said quietly. Much stronger. Whatever we are following, it is definitely in those peaks. But how? Somi wondered. How would hatchlings get all the way out here? They cannot fly well enough. The journey would be too dangerous. Maybe they did not come alone. Somi turned to look at him. What do you mean? Taiwu hesitated. I have been thinking about this all day. The energy signatures I am detecting. They are not just draken. There is another type of signal mixed in. Something I recognize. He paused. Human biosigns. Somi felt her stomach drop. Humans? There are humans in the shattered peaks? Maybe. The readings are not clear enough to be sure. But it would explain a lot. Taiwu looked at her with worried eyes. Did you hear about the children who went missing from the Colony Education Center? Somi had heard. 7 human children had wandered away from their school 3 days ago. Search parties had been sent out, but no one had found them yet. Everyone assumed they had gotten lost in the forest and would be found soon. You think our missing children and their missing hatchlings are in the same place? Somi asked. I think it is possible. Somi was quiet for a long moment. If human children were involved with the disappearance of draken hatchlings, the situation could become very dangerous. The draken were already suspicious of humans. If they thought human children had somehow led their young ones into a deadly place, do not tell the draken, Somi decided. Not yet. Not until we know more. Taiwu nodded. Understood. Across the cave, Kethros was watching them. Her yellow eyes glowed in the firelight. She could not hear what they were saying, but she could see them whispering. She did not trust secrets, but she said nothing. Morning would come soon. The shattered peaks would reveal their secrets then. Somi lay down to sleep, but rest did not come easily. In her dreams, she saw dragon children falling from the sky. She saw human children reaching up to catch them. She did not know if it was a nightmare or a vision of hope. When she woke, the first sun was rising. The shattered peaks waited. It was time to find the truth. The climb into the shattered peaks was the hardest thing Somi had ever done. The paths were narrow and broken. Rocks crumbled under their feet. Wind pushed against them from every direction, sometimes strong enough to make them grab the cliff walls for support. The dragon warriors could not fly here. The air currents were too dangerous, too unpredictable. So they climbed alongside the humans, their great claws digging into the stone, their wings pressed flat against their backs. Kethros led the way, her scarred face set with determination. Taiwu kept checking his scanner. "Closer," he said. "The signals are getting stronger. We are very close now." They had been climbing for 3 hours when they heard the sound dot at first. Somi thought it was the wind playing tricks. The shattered peaks made strange noises. Air whistling through holes in the rock. Stones falling in the distance. But this sound was different. This sound was a live dot. It was laughter. Everyone stopped. The dragon warriors lifted their heads, their ears turning toward the sound. Kethros's eyes went wide. "That is," she started to say, but she could not finish. Somi knew what she wanted to say. That was a child's laugh. But not just one child. Many children. And the sounds were mixed together in a way that made no sense. Some laughs were high and light, like human children. Others were deeper, with strange clicking sounds underneath. Like young draken. "This way," Taiwu said, pointing toward a narrow passage between 2 broken cliff faces. They moved through the passage in single file. The walls pressed close on both sides. Above them, the sky was just a thin strip of purple. Then the passage opened up, and they found themselves standing at the edge of a hidden valley. Somi would never forget what she saw next. The valley was shaped like a bowl, surrounded by broken mountains on all sides. The floor was covered with soft green moss that glowed with a gentle light. Small pools of clear water dotted the ground. And there, in the middle of this impossible garden, where the children dot all of them, 12 draken hatchlings played across the mossy ground. Their scales caught the light in beautiful colors. Copper and emerald and silver and gold. They ran and jumped and spread their small wings. They were healthy. They were happy. They were alive. And they were not alone. 7 human children moved among them. They wore dirty clothes and had leaves in their hair. They looked tired but excited. They were laughing with the draken hatchlings, playing games that seemed to have no rules, speaking to each other in ways that needed no words. As Somi watched, a small human girl climbed onto the back of a young draken. The draken was twice her size, with scales the color of bright copper. The girl wrapped her arms around his neck and held on tight. "Ready, Pyros?" The girl called out. The hatchling spread his wings. They were small and not fully formed. They should not have been able to lift him off the ground. But he crouched low, and then he jumped. For one beautiful moment. He flew. It was not graceful. It was not far. He rose only a few feet above the ground before coming down again in a tumble of wings and legs and laughing human girl. But it was flight, real flight. And from the way the hatchling's eyes shone, it was clear this was something special. Again, the girl shouted, "You did it! You flew for 3 whole seconds." Kethros made a sound that Somi had never heard before. It was not anger. It was not suspicion. It was pure, overwhelming shock. Her weapon fell from her claws and clattered on the stone. She did not seem to notice. "What is this?" Kethros whispered. "What are we seeing?" One of the other draken warriors was crying. Real tears rolled down her scaled face. "They are alive," she said. "Our babies are alive." The noise of Kethros' dropped weapon attracted attention. The children in the valley looked up. For a moment, everyone froze. Then chaos broke loose. The draken hatchlings ran toward the warriors, crying out for their clan. The Draken warriors rushed forward to meet them, making sounds of joy and relief. Humans and Draken embraced in a confusing mess of scales and wings and arms. The human children hung back, watching with uncertain eyes. They knew they were in trouble. They knew the adults had been searching for them. They knew there would be questions. Somi walked slowly into the valley. She knelt down in front of the small girl who had been riding the copper hatchling. The girl had black hair tied in 2 short braids. Her face was dirty and her clothes were torn, but her eyes were bright with intelligence. "What is your name?" Somi asked gently. "Hyung," the girl said. She was trying to look brave, but Somi could see fear underneath. "Hyung, can you tell me what happened here? How did you come to this place with the Draken children?" Hyung looked at her feet. Then she looked at the copper hatchling who had come to stand beside her. His wing brushed against her shoulder. "Piros needed help," Hyung said simply. "So we helped him." "Helped him with what?" "Flying." Hyung looked up at Somi with honest eyes. He could not fly. His wing was hurt. The other Draken said he would never fly. But that was not fair. Everyone should get to fly if they want to. So I said I would help him. And then my friends came to help too. Somi looked at the little Draken. Now that she looked closely, she could see that his left wing was different from his right. The skin between the wing bones was thinner, weaker. It would never be strong enough to carry him properly. By Draken standards, he was broken. But he had just flown. She had seen it with her own eyes. How? Somi asked. "How did you help him fly?" Before Hyun could answer, another human child stepped forward. This was a boy, maybe 10 years old, with serious eyes and dirt on his hands. His name was Woojin. "We built things," Woojin said. "Ramps to help them jump higher. Harnesses to support their wings while they practiced. We studied the wind patterns here. This valley has special air. The wind comes from below sometimes, like an invisible pillow. If you time it right, it pushes you up. The gravity is weaker here too," said another child. A girl named Gia. She was holding a piece of paper covered in drawings and numbers. "We measured it. The rocks are different. They do not pull as hard. That makes it easier for the hatchlings to fly." Somi stared at the children. They were so young. The oldest could not be more than 12. Yet they were talking about physics and engineering as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "But how did you find this place?" she asked. A boy named Sunwoo, who seemed to be the leader of the human children, answered. "We were looking for somewhere the Draken babies could practice safely. The normal parts of Pirith are too dangerous. Too much gravity. Too much wind." But Minseo found records about this valley in the old books. The Draken do not come here because the adults cannot fly through the peaks. But for little ones who cannot fly anyway, he shrugged. "It is perfect." Kethros had been listening. She approached slowly, her eyes fixed on the human boy. "You brought our hatchlings here," she said. Her voice was hard to read. "You took them from the nursery. You led them through dangerous mountains. You could have killed them." Sunwoo met her gaze without flinching. He was scared. Anyone could see that, but he did not look away. "We did not take them," he said. "They chose to come. Piros wanted to learn to fly. The others did too. The ones who were struggling. The ones who were afraid. We just showed them the way." Kethros looked at the copper hatchling standing beside Hyung. "Piros, is this true?" The little Draken stepped forward on shaky legs. He was clearly terrified of the great warrior. But he found his voice. "Yes, honored one. Hyung is my friend. She helped me when no one else would. She never called me broken. She never said I would fail. She just asked what I needed and then found ways to give it to me." Small flames flickered in his nostrils as he spoke, a sign of strong emotion. I can fly now. Not well, not far, but I can fly. Because of her. Because of all of them. Cathros was silent for a long time. The whole valley waited. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then, slowly, the great Draken warrior knelt down. She lowered her scarred head until her eyes were level with Hyung's. "You helped our children fly," she said. "You did not ask for anything. You did not make any demands. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped them." Her voice cracked slightly. "Why? Why would you do this?" Hyung thought about it. Then she smiled a small smile. "My grandmother always said helping is not hard. You just have to notice when someone needs it." She reached out and put her small hand on Piros's wing. Piros needed it, so he noticed. For the first time since the search began, Cathros's eyes softened. She did not know what to say. None of them did. They made camp in the valley that night. There was no way to travel back through the shattered peaks in darkness, and no one wanted to risk moving the children until they understood everything that had happened. Yoonji checked each child carefully, both human and Draken. She found no serious injuries. Some scrapes, some bruises, a few blisters on human feet from climbing, but nothing dangerous. The children had taken care of each other. As the stars appeared above the valley, Somi gathered everyone together. Humans and Draken sat in a circle on the soft moss. A small fire burned in the center, started by one of the Draken warriors. In its light, the full story finally came out. It had started 3 weeks ago. Piros was born different. His left wing had not formed correctly in the egg. The membrane between the bones was too thin, almost transparent. The healers examined him and shook their heads. There was nothing they could do. He would never fly. In Draken culture, flying was everything. A Draken who could not fly was considered incomplete. They were not punished or cast out, but they were pitied. They lived at the edges of society, always watching others soar through the sky, knowing they would never join them. Piros had known this truth since he was old enough to understand it. He watched his nestmates grow stronger. He watched their wings develop. He knew that soon they would take their first flights while he stayed on the ground. One night, he could not bear it anymore. He snuck out of the nursery and made his way to the edge of the Draken territory. He wanted to be alone. He wanted to try flying one more time, even though he knew it was hopeless. That was where Hyung found him. The human girl had been collecting glowing stones for a school project. She liked to wander in the crystal forest after her lessons. The adults did not know she went so far from the colony. She was careful to return before anyone noticed. She saw the little Draken trying to fly. He would run and jump and flap his wings as hard as he could. Each time, he rose only a little bit before crashing back to the ground. Each time, he got up and tried again. Hyung did not laugh. She did not feel sorry for him. She simply walked over and asked, "Can I help?" Piros was surprised. He had never spoken to a human before. He did not even know humans could speak his language. But Hyung was wearing a small translation device that her father had given her. She could understand him, and he could understand her. "I want to fly," Piros told her, "but my wing is broken. Everyone says I cannot." Hyung looked at his wings carefully. She was not a healer. She was not a scientist. She was just a young girl who liked to solve problems. "Your wing is not broken," she said. "It is just different. Maybe you need a different way to fly." That night, they talked for hours. Hyung asked many questions. How do Draken fly? What makes them go up? What makes them come down? Piros answered as best he could. He had never thought about flying in such a way before. He had only thought about doing it, not understanding it. When Hyung went home, she started reading. She found books about physics and engineering. She found records about Earth's atmosphere and weather patterns. She learned about lift and thrust and drag. She learned that flying was not magic but science. The next day, she brought her friend Woojin. Woojin was good at building things. He listened to Hyung explain the problem, and he started sketching designs. What if we build him a ramp? Woojin suggested. A special ramp that helps him get higher before he has to use his wings. They built the ramp in secret. It took them 3 days. When Piros tried it, he flew farther than he ever had before. But it still was not enough. So Hyun brought more friends. Jia knew about wind and weather. She had been flying kites since she was small. She understood how air moved. Minseo was the smartest person in their class. She could read faster than anyone and remember everything she read. Together, they formed a team. They discovered that the shattered peaks had unusual properties. The broken mountains created wind tunnels that pushed air upward in certain places. The rocks in some valleys had different gravity than the rest of the planet. If they could find the right spot, a weak-winged hatchling might be able to fly. Minseo found the records of this valley in an old database. Long ago, Draken had known about it. But the journey through the peaks was too dangerous for adult Draken, so the knowledge was forgotten. For small creatures who could not fly anyway, the journey was different. Difficult, but possible. Hyung told Piros about the valley. Piros told the other hatchlings. The ones who were struggling. The ones who were afraid. The ones whose wings grew slowly or whose fire burned weakly. Word spread quietly through the nursery. A plan was formed. The human children would lead the way through the shattered peaks. They had mapped the safe paths. They knew which rocks to climb and which to avoid. The Draken hatchlings would follow, using their claws and their small flames to help where needed. 7 human children and 12 Draken hatchlings slipped away in the night. The journey took 2 days. There were moments of fear. There were moments of doubt. But they helped each other. When a human child was too tired to climb, a hatchling would carry them. When a hatchling was too scared to continue, a human child would hold their claw and walk beside them. They reached the valley just as the first sun was setting. And then the real work began. Woojin built launching ramps from stones and branches. Jia studied the wind patterns and made maps showing when the air currents were strongest. Minseo created training schedules based on each hatchling's strengths and weaknesses. Sunwoo organized everyone and made sure no one worked too hard. And Hyung? Hyung just encouraged them. She cheered for every attempt. She celebrated every small success. She never let anyone give up. One by one, the hatchlings began to fly. Not all of them had wing problems. Some simply lacked confidence. Others had been told they were too small or too weak. The human children did not care about these things. They treated every hatchling the same way. They believed every hatchling could fly if they just found the right way. And they were right. By the time the search party found them, all 12 hatchlings had achieved some form of flight. Some could only manage short hops. Others could glide for several seconds. Piros himself had flown for almost 30 seconds, riding the updrafts like a leaf on the wind. When the story was finished, the valley was silent. Kethros stared at the human children. These small, soft, wingless creatures had done something impossible. They had taught Draken to fly. Not with magic. Not with ancient secrets. Just with patience and cleverness and kindness. Why did you not tell anyone? Kethros finally asked. Why did you sneak away? If you had asked for help, we might have... She stopped. They all knew she was about to lie. If the human children had asked for help, the Draken would have refused. They would have said it was impossible. They would have told the hatchlings to accept their fate. Sunwoo understood. You would not have believed us, he said gently. Sometimes you have to show people something is possible before they can believe it. Jinho, the old human engineer, laughed softly. That is the most human thing I have ever heard a child say. Even Kethros's mouth curved slightly upward. It might have been a smile. Around the fire, human children and Draken hatchlings sat together. Hyung leaned against Piros's side, her eyes closing with exhaustion. The copper-scaled hatchling curved his neck around her protectively. We will need to return in the morning, Somi said. The colony and the Draken city are both worried sick. I know, Sunwoo said. But, he hesitated. But what? Can we come back? After everything is settled? He looked around at the valley, at the other children, at the hatchlings who had become their friends. There is more work to do. More hatchlings who need help. And this place, it is special. It would be wrong to forget about it again. Kethros rose to her feet. Everyone looked at her. You asked to return, she said slowly. To continue helping our young. Sunwoo nodded. Yes. The great warrior looked at the children gathered around the fire. Human and Draken together. Learning from each other. Helping each other. Becoming something new. I cannot answer that question, Kethros said. Only the council can decide such things. She paused. But I will tell them what I have seen here. I will tell them about the children who gave our hatchlings wings. I will tell them. Her voice grew rough. I will tell them that I was wrong about humans. She looked at Somi with eyes that no longer held suspicion. I was wrong. Somi nodded. We've all been wrong about many things. Maybe it is time to be right together. The fire crackled. The stars turned overhead. And in a hidden valley in the shattered peaks, two species who had never truly understood each other began to see things differently. Tomorrow, they would face the council. Tomorrow, everything might change. But tonight, in this small and beautiful place, there was only peace. The council chamber fell silent as High Matriarch Veloth listened to Kethros's report. The ancient dragon sat on her throne of black stone, her golden eyes never blinking. Around her, the other council members watched with expressions that ranged from disbelief to wonder. Kethros had told the story from the beginning. The search, the discovery, the human children who had taught Draken hatchlings to fly. She left nothing out. She did not try to make humans look better or worse than they were. She simply told the truth. When she finished, no one spoke for a long moment. Then Elder Varth, the oldest member of the council, raised his head. His scales were faded with age, more gray than black. His wings had not carried him through the sky in many years. But his mind was still sharp. You say these human children helped our young fly, he said slowly. Not with machines, not with their strange technology, but with kindness? Kethros nodded. Yes, Elder, with patience and cleverness and kindness. They asked nothing in return. They simply saw creatures who needed help and decided to help them. Vorth made a sound deep in his throat. Humans are strange. They are so small, so weak. They die so quickly. Yet they spread across the stars like fire. They make friends with species that should be their enemies. They build and create and never stop trying to make things better. He shook his head. I have never understood them. Perhaps we were not meant to understand them, another council member said. Perhaps we were only meant to fear them. Fear? Kethros's voice was sharp. I stood in that valley and watched a human child no bigger than my claw teach one of our hatchlings to fly. What is there to fear in that? The council members shifted uncomfortably. For generations, they had viewed humans with suspicion. Humans spread too fast. They were too curious. They asked too many questions. The Draken had allowed them to build an outpost on Pirith, but only because refusing might have caused problems. They had never trusted them. Now, that distrust seemed foolish. Vela finally spoke. Her voice rolled through the chamber like distant thunder. "Bring the human children before us. I would speak with them myself." The great doors opened, and the children were led in. Hyun walked at the front, holding Pyros' claw. Behind them came Woojin and Jia and Minseo and Azungwoo and all the others. Ambassador Yuna walked beside them, her face calm but worried. The children stopped in the center of the chamber. They looked very small beneath the massive stone ceiling. The Dragon Council members towered over them like mountains, but the children did not look afraid. Vela studied them for a long moment. Then she looked at Hyung. "You," she said. "The other children say you were the first. You found our hatchling Pyros and offered to help him. Why?" Hyung thought about the question. She was only 8 years old. She had never stood before leaders of an alien race. She had never been asked to explain herself to creatures that could burn her to ash with a single breath. But she answered honestly, because that was the only way she knew how to answer. "He was sad," she said. "He thought he would never fly. Everyone told him he could not. But I thought, that is not fair. Everyone should get to try. Everyone should get help if they need it. Even creatures who are not your own kind. Even creatures who could harm you. Pyros would never hurt me." Hyung squeezed the hatchling's claw. "He is my friend." Velith looked at Pyros. "Is this true, young one? Is this human your friend?" Pyros stepped forward. His legs were still shaky when he stood before adults of his kind, but his voice was clear. "Yes, matriarch. Hyun is my friend. She helped me when no one else would. She did not care that I was different. She did not care that I could not fly. She just—" He struggled to find the words. "She just saw me. She saw what I wanted to be, not what everyone said I was." Tears appeared in the old matriarch's eyes. She did not try to hide them. "I have lived for 3,000 years, Vela said softly. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched stars be born and die. I thought I understood what power meant. I thought I understood what strength was." She looked at the human children standing small and brave before her. "I was wrong." She rose from her throne. Every dragon in the chamber bowed their heads as she descended the steps. She walked toward the children, each footstep shaking the ground. When she reached Hyung, she lowered herself until her massive head was level with the small girl. Her golden eyes were gentle now, filled with something that might have been love. "You gave our children wings," Vela said. "Not with magic or machines. With your heart. With your belief in them. That is a gift more precious than gold or power or territory." She turned to address the entire council. "Let it be known throughout Pirith, humans are not our enemies. They are not lesser creatures. They are our friends, if we are wise enough to accept their friendship." The council members looked at each other. Slowly, one by one, they nodded. Ambassador Yuna stepped forward. Her eyes were wet, but she kept her voice steady. "Matriarch, on behalf of the human colony, I accept your offer of friendship. We came to Pirith hoping to learn from your people. We never imagined that our children would be the ones to teach." Velith laughed. It was a sound like boulders rolling down a mountain, deep and powerful and surprisingly warm. "Perhaps that is the lesson," she said. "Adults build walls. Children build bridges." In the weeks that followed, everything changed. The valley in the shattered peaks was given a name, the Valley of First Flight. Teams of humans and Draken worked together to make the path safer. They built shelters and training equipment. They created a program where hatchlings who struggled could come to learn at their own pace. The human children became heroes. Not just to humans, but to Draken as well. Parents brought their struggling hatchlings to meet them. Young Draken who had given up hope asked for their help. Hyung and Pyros were always at the center of it. They became a symbol of what was possible when two species chose understanding over fear. 1 year later, a great ceremony was held in the Valley of First Flight. Pyros stood at the top of a launching ramp. His wings were still weaker than other Draken his age. They would always be different. But now that difference did not matter. He had learned to use the wind. He had learned to find the thermal currents. He had learned that there was more than one way to fly. Hyung sat on his back, strapped into a harness that Woojin had designed. She was grinning so wide it looked like her face might split in two. Both suns were setting. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple and gold. Hundreds of Draken and humans had gathered to watch. Ready? Pyros asked. Always, Hyung replied. He ran. He jumped. His wings spread wide and caught the rising air dot, and they flew. Not just for a few seconds. Not just a short hop. They flew high and far, circling the valley while the crowd below cheered and wept and held each other. Elder Vorith stood beside Ambassador Yuna, watching the children in the sky. Your species confuses me, he admitted. You are weak. You cannot breathe fire. You cannot fly. And yet, he gestured at the scene before them. You see a creature that cannot fly, and you find a way to give it wings. Perhaps that is the most terrifying power of all. Yuna smiled. Or the most hopeful. Vorith considered this. Perhaps they are the same thing. Above them, Hyung was laughing as the wind rushed past her face. Pyros was making sounds of pure joy. They were flying together, human and Draken, proving that the impossible was only impossible until someone decided to try Dot in the years to come. Many things would change. Humans and Draken would build cities together. They would explore new worlds together. They would face challenges and dangers that neither could handle alone. But whenever things seemed darkest, whenever hope seemed lost, someone would remember the story of the dragon children who disappeared and were found laughing as human kids helped them fly Dot. It was a simple story, really. A story about a girl who saw someone who needed help and decided to help them. A story about children who did not know what was impossible and so made the impossible happen. A story about the most human gift of all. The stubborn belief that every creature deserves a chance to fly Dot, and in the end, that was enough to change everything.